The morning Chicago view from Catherine Williams' apartment window was as lively as ever. Light filtered between the skyscrapers, gently illuminating her living room. She carefully poured coffee while doing a final check of her advertising presentation. "I need to review this proposal one more time," she murmured. Catherine had been working as a senior copywriter at Creative Impact, one of Chicago's most dynamic advertising agencies, for nearly 10 years. Her copy was used in advertising campaigns for many major companies and was quietly respected within the industry. However, she never mentioned this herself. The phone rang, with "Mother" displayed on the screen. Catherine hesitated momentarily, then took a deep breath and answered. "Hello, Mother." "Catherine, you finally answered." Barbara's voice had its usual irritation. "I've called so many times without an answer, I thought maybe you were too busy to care about your family anymore." Catherine closed her eyes and swallowed her retort. Barbara had once been a model celebrated in Chicago's social circles. Even now, her perfectly styled hair, makeup, and carefully selected outfits made her appear ageless when she went out. To such a mother, the always plainly dressed Catherine who preferred not to stand out was constantly a subject for improvement. "I'm sorry, I've been busy with work." Work. You're still at that, what is it?" "That advertising job." "Yes, of course. It'll be exactly 12 years on my next birthday," Catherine answered while gazing out the window. "I see. Speaking of your birthday," Barbara's tone changed. "I'm planning a special dinner. Next Friday, at the Crystal." Catherine leaned forward in surprise. The Crystal was one of Chicago's most exclusive restaurants, famous for being nearly impossible to get reservations. What surprised her even more was that her mother had remembered her birthday. Usually, she wouldn't even get a phone call. "For me." The words slipped out before she could stop them. "Yes, for you. It's going to be a special day." Her mother's voice had an unusual warmth. "Brittany will be there too." Just hearing that name sent a small pain through Catherine's chest. Her sister Brittany had their mother's stunning looks and polished social skills, building an impressive career at a major financial company. Since childhood, she had been called the pretty daughter and monopolized their mother's affection. "Brittany too. I see. Yes, she has a special announcement." "Of course, we'll celebrate your birthday too." Catherine sighed quietly at that, too. She was always an afterthought. Still, her mother had remembered her birthday for once. Perhaps that alone was something to be grateful for. "All right, Mother. I'll be there." After hanging up, Catherine looked at the family photo hanging on her living room wall. It was from Christmas 10 years ago, probably their last family photo. Her mother and sister smiled radiantly in the center, while Catherine stood at the edge, as if huddling next to them. It had always been that way. Pushed to the margins, living as if hidden in shadows. "Maybe they're finally starting to accept me," Catherine thought, tucking her presentation materials into her bag with a small hope in her heart. Maybe this time will be different. She knew she was just wishful thinking. Catherine wore a water blue silk dress she hadn't worn for years and checked her appearance in the mirror. When was the last time she'd worn this dress? The price tag was still attached. She had been saving it for a special occasion. She thought today was finally that day. "How do I look?" she asked herself. For the past week, Catherine had been thinking about the birthday dinner with mixed feelings of anxiety and expectation. She left work early, had her hair done at an upscale salon she normally wouldn't visit, and took extra care with her makeup. Unusually for her, she chose a slightly darker shade of lipstick. "Tonight's going to be wonderful," Catherine whispered to herself reassuringly. At twilight, with Chicago skyscrapers gleaming, a taxi carrying Catherine pulled up in front of the Crystal. The doorman politely opened the door and welcomed her. At the restaurant's imposing entrance stood a small sign with golden letters reading, "Williams Family Special Party." Catherine's heart raced. Her mother had truly prepared a special event for her. She couldn't suppress a smile, feeling a childlike excitement. "Ms. Williams, yes. I'm confirming your reservation." The hostess checked her list and looked slightly confused. Catherine didn't miss the change in her expression. "Is there a problem?" "No, not at all. This way, please." The hostess regained her professional smile and guided her to a private room. When the door opened, there were Barbara, Brittany, and several unfamiliar faces. Everyone was dressed elegantly, chatting with glasses in hand. In the center of the table was a large three-tiered cake, with champagne bottles chilling in ice. "Catherine, you came." Barbara noticed Catherine and extended her hand. "Everyone, this is Catherine, my eldest daughter." Catherine smiled at the unfamiliar people and approached the table. When she found her designated seat, there was a name card. As she leaned in to read it, her smile froze. The name card read, "Loser Sister," in cursive script. "What is this?" Catherine looked around. Then, seeing the lavish cake on the table, her heart sank. The cake had, "Congratulations on your promotion, Brittany," written in bright icing. There was nothing celebrating her birthday. "Oh, Catherine. You're late," her mother said coldly. Barbara's eyes had none of the warmth she'd heard on the phone, replaced by the familiar sneer. "What day did you think this was?" Catherine's voice trembled. "Today is a celebration for the pretty one's promotion," Barbara laughed loudly. "Brittany has been promoted to department head. Your birthday is just a side note, isn't it?" Brittany raised her champagne glass high and said proudly, "Thanks for coming, sis. But honestly, sending you an invitation was Mother's strong wish. I said there was no need." Catherine was speechless. In her head, she kept hearing her mother's words on the phone, "It's going to be a special day. We'll celebrate your birthday too." She had definitely said that. But it was a lie. A trap. Brittany's friends looked Catherine up and down appraisingly. Catherine understood the meaning of those glances. She had already been introduced to them as the pitiful sister. "Ugly and incompetent, what a terrible combination," Brittany said loudly enough for her friends to hear, and they all giggled. Catherine's cheeks burned, and tears welled in her eyes. But she took a deep breath, determined not to show it. From years of experience, she knew that showing weakness would lead to the worst outcome. "Thank you for inviting me to this celebration, Mother," Brittany, Catherine said quietly. Her voice was surprisingly calm. She smiled slightly, readjusted her bag on her shoulder. "Brittany, congratulations on your promotion. That's wonderful news." Brittany nodded with a triumphant expression. "Yes, it is. You probably can't imagine what it's like to be in a position of responsibility." For just a moment, Catherine thought about arguing back. She could have mentioned that she herself was entrusted with important projects at her advertising agency. But she knew it would be pointless. Her mother and sister would never see her successes. "Excuse me," Catherine said quietly, and turned to leave the restaurant. Behind her, the laughter of her mother, sister, and the strangers rang out. That laughter was something Catherine had heard many times in her 36 years of life. Laughter full of contempt, disdain, and above all, a coldness that treated her very existence as worthless. "Ma'am, are you all right?" the restaurant doorman asked with concern. Catherine nodded while wiping away tears. "Could you call me a taxi?" As she got into the taxi, the driver looked at her through the rearview mirror. "Where to?" Catherine thought for a moment and thought, "I don't want to go home." But tonight she needed a place to return to. A safe place to lick her wounds and think about her next step. "Northside, near Lincoln Park, please," she gave the address of her apartment. As the taxi drove through the city lights, Catherine stared out the window. Chicago's night view was beautiful. There were tears in her eyes, but somehow the scene beyond them seemed more vivid than ever before. "That's enough," she whispered. "I've had enough." That night, something changed within Catherine. The longing for approval from her family that she had carried for years quietly but surely disappeared. In its place, a new feeling began to grow. She herself didn't yet know what it was. Catherine's apartment had always been her sanctuary. But that night was different. She closed the door, leaned against the entrance, and finally let the tears flow. Emotions she had suppressed for so long poured out like a broken dam. Why? She sat on the floor, hugging her knees. Why always? She stared at her dress. The dress she had saved for a special day had now become a symbol of sad memories. Feeling crushed by mixed emotions of anger, sadness, and humiliation, Catherine slowly stood up. After showering to wash away her tears, she took a wine bottle from the refrigerator. While pouring a glass, she picked up her smartphone and opened social media. Brittany's latest post was displayed on the screen. The photo showed the party after Catherine had left. Brittany was in the center with a radiant smile, surrounded by their mother and friends. Catherine's seat had already been cleared away. As if she had never been there. Catherine continued scrolling, looking at other photos and comments posted that same night. Then, an unfamiliar post caught her eye. A financial industry whistleblower account had posted rumors about Brittany's company. Suspicious points in Goldstand Investments' financial reports. According to inside information, there may be number manipulation in some departments. Catherine read the post several times. Goldstand Investment. That name was very familiar to her because her company had just started handling their advertising campaign last month. And the person in charge was none other than Catherine herself. Brittany became a department head at Goldstand, didn't she? Catherine searched her memory. She took a sip of wine and pondered. Was it just a rumor, or was something really happening? Either way, this coincidence was strange. The next morning, Catherine arrived at work earlier than usual. In the quietness of the office before anyone else arrived, she accessed the database and opened the Goldstand investment files. She began reviewing the financial materials provided by the client for preparing the advertising campaign. These are the materials submitted by Brittany's department. Catherine carefully examined the numbers displayed on the monitor. Though she was an advertising copywriter, she was also good with numbers. She had minored in economics in college. That skill came in handy now. Catherine spent hours meticulously investigating the materials, noting points that raised questions. "Good morning, Catherine. You're unusually early," her colleague Michael stood by her desk, tilting his coffee cup. "Oh, good morning. Just wanted to check something," Catherine answered while minimizing her screen. "The Goldstand project." Michael peered over. "Their CFO is coming for a meeting today, right?" Catherine tensed. "Today?" "Yes, in the accounting conference room at 11. Didn't you know?" Catherine quickly checked her schedule. Indeed, there was a meeting with Goldstand Investments CFO. With last night's events filling her mind, she had completely forgotten. "Thanks, Michael. I'll get ready." After he left, Catherine continued checking the numbers. As time passed, her suspicions turned into certainty. There were clear inconsistencies in some figures, concentrated in reports from Brittany's department. The investment returns and client asset growth rates were unnaturally high, significantly exceeding market averages. "These numbers have clearly been falsified," Catherine looked at the files with trembling hands. She hesitated. What should she do with this information? Should she stay quiet because they were family? But the humiliating incident at the restaurant flashed in her mind. The loser sister name card and the cold sneers from her sister and mother. Because they're family, but how have they treated me? Catherine asked herself. For several minutes, she sat quietly, continuing to think. Then she made her decision. This isn't revenge. It's justice. At 11, Catherine entered the conference room to meet with Goldstan Investments CFO, George Hamilton. He was a legendary figure in the accounting world. Ms. Williams, it's an honor to meet you. Hamilton stood up and shook hands with Catherine. I've heard your advertising plans are excellent. Thank you, Mr. Hamilton, Catherine replied in a composed voice. Before I present our advertising campaign proposal today, there's something I'd like to discuss with you. She slowly opened her laptop and turned the screen toward him. These are the financial data provided by your company. Our advertising campaign is built based on this data, Catherine began explaining calmly. However, according to my analysis, there are inconsistencies in the data from several departments. She gave specific examples and pointed out contradictions in the numbers. She could see Hamilton's expression gradually changing. These figures were submitted by your company's investment division, specifically the department headed by Brittany Williams, Catherine stated matter-of-factly. Brittany Williams? Hamilton frowned. Do you have some connection with her? Catherine hesitated for just a moment but quickly firmed her resolve. Actually, she's my sister. A heavy silence fell over the room. What I want you to understand is that I'm pointing out this issue precisely because I value Goldstan Investment as a client, Catherine continued. Also, now that I know about this matter, I felt the need to ensure transparency before proceeding with the advertising campaign. Hamilton looked at Catherine with a serious expression. Why would you do something that could harm your own sister? Because I believe integrity is more important than family ties, Catherine answered quietly. Especially in matters involving many investors' assets. That afternoon, Catherine anonymously sent evidence to the compliance department of Brittany's company. Simultaneously, she sent copies of the same materials to financial authorities. The moment she pressed the send button, she felt a strange sense of liberation. For 36 years, she had always tried to be a good daughter. No matter how her mother and sister treated her, she never rebelled or raised her voice. But today, for the first time, she had stood up for her own values. 3 weeks later, when Catherine arrived at the office in the morning, her colleagues were whispering about something. Michael walked quickly toward her. Catherine, did you see? About Brittany Williams. Catherine feigned calm. What are you talking about? Michael showed her his tablet. The top news on a major financial media outlet reported on accounting fraud allegations at Goldstan Investment and the suspension of involved parties. The article stated that an internal email had been sent to all employees saying, there are suspicions that reports were falsified to inflate performance. Brittany's name wasn't explicitly mentioned, but it was clear that the targeted department was the one she led. I see. Catherine said quietly. That afternoon, a communication came in from Goldstan Investment. It was a notification from CFO Hamilton that they were terminating their contract with the advertising agency. The company would take a big hit. Catherine gazed out of her office window. Chicago's skyscrapers glowed red in the setting sun. She felt the weight of what she had done. The guilt of betraying her family and the pride of doing the right thing. Contradictory emotions swirled within her. Catherine, her boss Jeremy approached her desk. The Goldstan situation is unfortunate. But I appreciate your integrity. If we had proceeded with the campaign, it might have become an issue affecting the company's reputation. Catherine smiled. Thank you, Jeremy. Her smartphone vibrated. It was a message from Brittany. What's happening? Things are terrible at the company. Call me, we need to talk. Catherine read the message but didn't reply. It wasn't time yet. She put her smartphone back in her bag and left the office in the twilight. 1 month after Brittany's fraud was exposed, on a calm Saturday morning, the doorbell of Catherine's apartment rang loudly. Without checking through the intercom, she headed to the entrance in her bathrobe, thinking someone had made a mistake. When she opened the door, Barbara was standing there. Her mother, who was usually perfectly groomed, now appeared to have dressed hastily. There were even makeup imperfections that she would never normally allow. "Mother?" Catherine couldn't hide her surprise. "May I come in?" Barbara's voice was cold and trembling. She was clearly trying to suppress her anger. Catherine silently stepped aside and invited her mother in. As soon as Barbara entered the living room, she turned around. "You set Brittany up." "Your own sister," she shouted in an anger-trembling voice. Catherine took a deep breath and answered in a calm voice. "I only brought the truth to light. Brittany should accept the consequences of her actions." "Consequences?" "Her career is ruined. Her reputation at work has been destroyed." "Is that what you wanted?" "Wanted?" Catherine gave a sarcastic smile. "Mother, have you ever once cared about what I wanted?" Barbara snorted like a bull. "You've always been jealous. Because Brittany is talented and beautiful. We would have been happy if you weren't around." Those words pierced Catherine's heart. But this time was different. The pain quickly turned to anger. "Mother, do you remember that birthday party at the restaurant?" Catherine picked up her smartphone from the coffee table. "What are you talking about?" Barbara said with displeasure. "Let me show you something." Catherine operated her smartphone. Barbara looked at the smartphone screen despite her irritation. What was displayed was footage of her and Brittany changing Catherine's name card to "loser sister" at a table in the Crystal. It also showed them instructing the restaurant staff that Brittany is the real star. "This is..." The color drained from Barbara's face. "There's more," Catherine said quietly. The next video showed mother and sister laughing together and making fun of Catherine's appearance and work before she arrived. Barbara's voice saying, "That girl really doesn't try. Dressing like that at her age." And Brittany's words, "I always work hard because I don't want to end up like my sister," were clearly recorded. "How did you get this footage?" Barbara asked with a pale face. "Remember Jennifer, my college friend? She's now the assistant manager at the Crystal," Catherine explained matter-of-factly. "Seeing such terrible behavior, she secretly gave me the security camera footage." Barbara collapsed into a chair. "What are you planning to do? What about this footage?" "If I posted it on social media, many people would learn your true nature," Catherine said calmly. "Especially now that Brittany is facing legal issues, additional social sanctions would be tough, wouldn't they?" "That's blackmail," Barbara said in a trembling voice. "No, it's simply presenting facts," Catherine smiled. "I've already asked my restaurant manager friend to copy the footage. Whether this goes public on social media depends on your attitude from now on." Barbara looked at Catherine with an expression of disbelief. You've really changed." "I haven't changed, I've finally understood my own worth." Catherine looked at her mother with serious eyes. "I won't be trampled by you anymore." "So, what do you want?" Barbara asked, as if resigned. Catherine sat down on the sofa and crossed her legs. She had been thinking about this moment for days. "First, I want you and Brittany to apologize publicly. To me, and to the investors," Catherine began slowly. "Next, I want both of you to receive psychological counseling. It seems there are serious issues with your values." Barbara's eyes widened. "Public apology? Counseling? You must be joking." "This is no joke, Mother," Catherine said quietly. "These are my conditions. If you can't meet them, I'll release the footage. But you're our daughter, our family." her mother said weakly. Yes, I am family, Catherine repeated those words. But precisely because we're family, we should respect each other. What you've done to me over the years can't be called respect. Barbara fearfully stared at the smartphone on the table. The screen was paused on an image of herself mocking her daughter. That smile was far from the elegant smile Barbara Williams was known for in social circles. It was an ugly expression. All right, Barbara finally said. I'll talk to Brittany and convey your conditions. Catherine stood up and turned on the coffee maker. Would you like some coffee? Her voice had compassion. This might be a long talk. Barbara stared at her daughter in surprise. Catherine's attitude wasn't triumphant, but rather calm and composed. As if years of conflict had been released. Yes, please, Barbara answered in a small voice. While pouring coffee, Catherine looked out the window. From her apartment window, Chicago's cityscape spread out beautifully. The sun peeked through the clouds, announcing the beginning of a new day. Mother, I don't know what our relationship will be like from now on, Catherine said as she placed a coffee cup in front of her mother. But I hope this will be a new beginning. Barbara took the cup and nodded slightly. In her eyes floated an emotion Catherine had never seen before. Was it fear, or the beginning of respect? Catherine smiled gently. For 36 years, she had always lived in the shadow of her mother and sister. But now, she was standing in her own light. And that light was brighter and stronger than she had thought. I won't live seeking your approval anymore, Catherine quietly declared. But I would welcome a relationship where we respect each other. Silence flowed through the room. After a long pause, Barbara put down her cup and wiped her eyes with a trembling hand. Catherine, She seemed to be searching for words. I may not have known you. That's right, Mother, Catherine answered quietly. But it's not too late to start now. The view from Catherine Williams' office was the same Chicago skyline as a year ago. However, everything surrounding her had changed. On the wall hung a plaque reading, Creative Director, and on her desk shone a trophy for a creative award she had won. Ms. Williams, your ideas for the new Goldman campaign are brilliant, a young assistant said excitedly. The whole industry is watching. Catherine smiled serenely. Thank you, Jessica. It's the result of the entire team's efforts. She gazed at the Chicago scenery stretching outside the window. The spring sunlight reflected off the skyscrapers, making the whole city seem to shine. Career success was just one part of the changes in her life. The bigger changes had happened inside her. The phone rang, with Brittany displayed on the screen. Catherine thought for a moment before answering. Hello, Brittany. Sis, are we still on for dinner today? Her sister's voice had lost its former arrogance and was somewhat hesitant. After the promotion fraud incident, Brittany had found it difficult to get rehired in the financial industry. She now worked at a small consulting firm in a lower position than before. Her social media no longer featured luxury lifestyle boasts but occasionally uploaded modest everyday photos. Yes, 7 o'clock is fine, Catherine answered. Is Mother coming too? She said she would. She might be a little late because it's after her counseling session. Barbara's reputation in social circles had declined, and even her former friends had distanced themselves. Through continued psychological counseling, she had gradually begun to recognize the distortion in her values. Recently, she had started participating in community volunteer activities, finding value in things other than appearance and social status. I understand, Catherine said. I'm looking forward to it. After hanging up, Catherine opened her desk drawer and took out a letter. It had arrived from her mother and sister on her 37th birthday, exactly 1 year ago, a letter of apology. Catherine, I've done things to you that are beyond words to apologize for. She had read this letter many times. At first with doubt, then gradually acceptance, and now cherishing it as a foundation for building a new relationship. As Catherine left her workplace for dinner with her family, Chicago was bathed in twilight colors. The restaurant she had chosen wasn't as luxurious as the Crystal, but it was a place with a warm, comfortable atmosphere. Sitting at the table, Catherine reflected on her life. She still hadn't completely forgiven her family, but at least the door to dialogue was open. Most importantly, she had a strong determination never to let others define her worth again. "Live my life by my own values," she whispered quietly. That was the most valuable lesson she had gained in the past year. The restaurant door opened, and Barbara and Brittany appeared. Catherine smiled and waved. The time for a new beginning had come.